Hi everyone. Today we're going to talk about a primer that actually holds up to its claims, which isn't too common. There are a lot of primers out there that tend to make a lot of promises and just end up, kind of being average or lukewarm, especially when it comes to primers that talk about being mattifying or extending the life of your foundation. Well, the Becca Ever Matte Poreless Priming Perfector. Well, this particular formula is very simple. It's actually water-based, so it's not silicone-based like a lot of primers. So right away, it having a water base gives it a much lighter weight on skin. Nothing wrong with silicone, but some silicone primers can feel pretty thick and heavy. Others can feel pretty light. This does feel very lightweight once it actually warms on skin. It does look pretty thick when it comes out of the tube, and I'll show you what that looks like here in a second. But it looks pretty thick, but once it kind of warms up, it turns into almost kind of a water-based gel feel, and it dries pretty quickly. Now, this formula is primarily just water and magnesium aluminum silicate, which is a clay derivative absorbent. It's often used either as a thickening agent or, of course, as an absorbent agent. This particular formula, though, is unique because it uses a whole hell of a lot of this ingredient. It's actually water and then magnesium aluminum silicate. But I think the best way to show you what this looks like is to actually show you what it looks like going on skin and how it works under foundation, which is exactly what I'm going to do right now. So the first thing you want to do is, of course, do your skincare routine in the morning as you normally would. Then your final step is, of course, going to be your daytime moisturizer with sunscreen or your sunscreen, whatever it's labeled. I'm a big fan of the Resist Super Light Wrinkle Defense SPF 30. You really get, in my opinion, a lot more kind of bang for your buck in terms of the mattifying effect when using a mineral sunscreen. Now, it has to be a dry finish mineral sunscreen. If you use a more moisturizing mineral sunscreen, you will get some of that boosted benefit, but it's not going to be quite the same as what you would find when using a matte finish like this. Okay, so you put it on as you normally would, and you can see I kind of use quite a bit there, I think. So after you've applied your daytime moisturizer with sunscreen or your regular sunscreen, whatever you want to call it, you want to give it about 1 to 3 minutes to dry, just to really kind of allow it to set, allow the sunscreen, to kind of get itself into position, and then you can apply your primer on top of that. Of course, we're going to use the Ever Matte here today. Now, with this product, Becca is very specific with the instructions that it gives for good reason, because if you just put this on like any primer, if you put it on with a sponge, for example, or you just kind of slap it on with your fingers, or rub it in, those sorts of things, your experience is not going to be that great, with this, because of how fast this dries and how matte it becomes. If you rub it, it's going to peel off, or it's really, at the very least, you're going to see it kind of tack up and kind of pull up your products. So you apply about a kind of a pea-sized amount, depending on how oily your skin is and what you're doing with it. I put this all over my face because I do tend to get pretty oily. So about this much is kind of generally how much I actually use. So you take that and then you kind of warm it up fast, and then you pat it onto your face. And you pat it anywhere where you do tend to get oily or shiny. I'm going to pat it all over because, as I mentioned, I can get pretty oily. And as you can see, holy cow, so this just kind of takes away all the shine right away. It gives you that immediate, kind of matte finish, and it does go on. This being a water-based primer, it does feel a bit wet, at first. Once you put it on, as you warm it up between your fingers and you apply it over your face, you'll get that kind of initially kind of, wet or damp feeling. So you do have to let this dry for about 1 to 3 minutes again, because if you apply something on top of this, your makeup or whatever you want on top of this while it's still wet, it's actually going to grab onto the makeup, on those spots where it's not quite dry yet. So it's not going to blend as easily, especially if you're trying to blend a super matte foundation over this particular product. But today I'm going to show you actually what this looks like with foundation on top of it. And not only am I going to show you just any foundation on top of this, but I'm going to actually show you what a super dewy foundation actually looks like when you wear it on top of this super mattifying primer. Okay, so I'm going to use a beauty blender here. This has already been dampened slightly. And with the Charlotte Tilbury Light Wonder Foundation, now as you can see, I'm actually going to show you again kind of how dewy this is, but you can see right away this is definitely a moisturizing finish foundation. So after you've let your Ever Matte primer dry for just a moment, you go ahead and pick up that foundation and you want to apply it very quickly over skin. Now, with this particular formula, the primer, the Ever Matte primer, you have to move, because if you don't, this particular primer tends to dry any foundation and have it kind of stick in spots. Now, if it's a dewy finish foundation like this, it's pretty easy to blend out, any mistakes that you might make over this primer. But if you're wearing, again, a matte finish foundation, we tried this with a few different options, but a matte finish foundation becomes very difficult to blend if you don't move very fast. So it does take a little bit of trial and error to get that right speed down for your particular foundation. But once you do, you'll see that even with this foundation being a super dewy formula, you can see that it still looks pretty matte on my face, which is crazy. If you've seen the video, for this, or if you've tried this yourself, you know how, kind of glowy or radiant this particular foundation can be. But even with a super dewy formula like this, or especially on its own with just a little powder on top of it, it holds up really well throughout the day. So I highly encourage you to check this out. It did earn 4 stars, of course, on Beautypedia, given all I've said about how wonderfully effective this particular formula is. So I definitely recommend checking it out. If you've tried this, if you don't know about it and you are going to try it, or you have other questions or comments, go ahead and leave that in the About section below. If you want to learn more about this product, go ahead and check out my full review on the Beautypedia website, also in the About section below. Thanks for watching.